as we've seen, it had a cascade effect, a kind of a domino effect in terms of how the Turkish government reacted to the attacks, and the consequences of Turkey's reaction. I think there's clearly both a domestic dimension to the issue and a regional dimension to it. As far as the domestic dimension is concerned, clearly we've seen a restart in the airstrikes against the PKK, in addition with the strikes against ISIL. Now, where the priority lies in terms of which one of the two is the main threat at the moment for the Turkish government is open for debate at best. From the first figures we can find from newspapers and governmental sources, it seems the priority lies more towards northern Iraq and PKK hideouts rather than ISIS headquarters, which in turn opened up actually the bigger question of where the dialogue with the PKK stands at the moment. Over the past few days, it became clear it's basically a thing of the past. So the first, probably the most important element as a consequence of the attack in Suruc, as an indirect consequence of the attack in Suruc, is that there's no longer an open dialogue between the AKP and the Kurdish side. What's more surprising probably is that this applies to both the PKK and the HDP. The Kurdish issue, in a nutshell, has been brought back to its security dimension. It's no longer a matter of political compromise. It's become once again basically a zero-sum game between the state and the PKK on the other side, which is clearly a step backwards when we think about where we got with the discussion on the Kurdish issue in Turkey. So there's certainly that to keep in mind. Of course, it's also quite a delicate political moment for Turkey, still looking to form a coalition government. Probably one of the most interesting and, in a sense, paradoxical elements is that the HDP has been actually in a sense, the real winner of June's elections. And as of the past couple of days, the debate has moved towards asking for lifting the parliamentary immunity of its own members. So this opens up an awful lot of all problems Turkey has already seen with regard to its Kurdish parties or pro-Kurdish parties and their alleged affiliations either with the PKK or with the broader Kurdish community, so to speak. Probably another important point is that under the current conditions, this political situation favors a potential alliance with the nationalist party, the MHP, simply because the policy on the Kurds has shifted, has changed, has turned upside down, and the narrative and the approach is much more similar to that of the nationalist party than it was over the past few months and years. So it also opens up questions about how likely a potential coalition government between the AKP and the MHP might be. Opening Incirlik to the US, for example, to carry out airstrikes in Syria is in a way a step forward for Turkey, but it also kicks the ball back in a way in the US field, because Turkey has taken up responsibility to carry out some of the airstrikes, but the vast majority of it will still be carried out by the US and the UK. So Turkey's direct role against ISIS won't be, in my opinion, dominant, or it won't be the major partner among those who are involved in fighting against ISIS. And I think the recent data on the amount of airstrikes that have been carried out speaks volumes about where priorities lie in the Turkish government when it comes to deciding which is the main security priority in the region. The biggest issue at the moment seems to be the disagreement between Turkey and the US on the role PYD and YPG should have in northern Syria. Up until last week, the use of Incirlik was made was linked to the creation of a potential no-fly zone over northern Syria.
What sort of condition for?
Exactly. One of the conditions was the creation of a no-fly zone, which no one was really interested in taking upon, because it means it just doesn't mean flying over Syria, making sure everything is all right. It means an actual military involvement against Assad's regime. Like it or not, that's how things work out when there's a no-fly zone involved. Now the idea has been scaled down to the creation of a safe zone in northern Syria, and still NATO partners are not willing to go down that way. So it all boils down to a Turkey-US bilateral decision, and the US at the moment doesn't seem too keen on doing that either. Especially because, and we get back to the core of the question, there are two completely different views at play between Turkey and the US in terms of what PYD and YPG represent in the Syrian conflict. For Turkey, it's not, if not the number one, among the top two threats in Syria at the moment, top three threats in Syria at the moment. For the US, it actually represents boots on the ground. So there's been a lot of military cooperation and political cooperation between the US and PYD in the political field, and with YPG in the military field. So at the moment there's no way for Turkey and the US to find a common position on which role they should attribute to these two actors on the field.